But Ardnamurchan, super excited to do this tasting. I'll get in a little bit kind of why we're doing this tasting after I do the introductions, but everything I've had from them has just been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. And I've had a lot of really good feedback on Maclean's nose the last week or so. Two different people have kind of randomly told me how much they like that in the last week. So I'm excited to get in that. Haven't tried any of these because literally sold this tasting out pretty quickly, and um, there was not a lot left over, so I couldn't sneak any pours early like I sometimes do. But super excited for Carl Crafts to be joining us from Carl. Are you in Scotland today? Today, right?
Yeah.
Because you were recently stateside, right?
I was. Yeah, I was doing one of my market visits with Sam and well, not with Sam directly on this particular trip, but with his colleague Chris. So yeah, I was in LA and Hawaii. It was a really tough go for a work trip, I have to say.
Yeah, I'm sure. That's what because someone just told me they were just hanging out with you. I forgot it was one of the store owners. I forgot who, but
yeah, you can send my apologies for having to deal with me. But
on that, why don't I introduce or why don't you introduce yourself and then we'll get going on the pours, and we'll also have Sam introduce himself after you.
Yeah, sounds great. Thanks very much, Nando, and real pleasure to be here. Thanks to you to Sam for getting this sorted. It's quite a lineup, honestly. There's a lot of hopefully people will agree. A lot of very tasty drams. I guess I should start. I'll be quick about introducing myself because we need to get to the whiskey. That's the important bit. But the reason I'm American and disappointing you all without the Scottish brogue. So yeah, basically I worked in the industry basically my whole career, the last 18 years in the States. Through my previous role, met the guys at Ardnamurchan. Alex, the managing director, who I'll be making reference to, I'm guessing, throughout the course of the evening. And then my direct boss, Connell, who's our sales director. Met them through my previous role, which is also how I met Sam, funnily enough. And basically kind of threw a dart and said, hey, if you guys are expanding, I'd like to be considered. And now I live in Scotland and work for Ardnamurchan and Adelphi. So I'm the lucky guy, I guess. Awesome. So yeah, I'm on the sales team. With a small independent company, we tend to do all sorts of things. So I do sales, marketing. I'm now on the blending team as of this calendar year. So I'm happy to talk about kind of what that process is in terms of creation of what goes into the bottle, the ideation, sort of the process. I don't do the distilling. I know a decent bit about it. But I am very involved in what goes into, what gets ultimately shipped to Sam and then hopefully out to you all as potential Ardnamurchan fans. So that's me. I'm from New Hampshire originally. I'll throw that in there from the Northeast, but really excited to be here. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you for that introduction. Sam, you want to introduce yourself real quick? I know most of us know you, but just in case someone on here doesn't.
If you guys have your full cups of coffee and some cigars lightened up, I'm going to start. It's about 3.5 hours introduction. So Sam with Impex Beverages, the U.S. importer of a boutique to mid-size distilleries and other brands, been in business since 1997, running the JVS, which is a distribution company in California. In 2008, we opened Impex Beverages, and since then we're booming and we're alive and we're enjoying it. Especially when it comes to events like this, seeing you half of familiar faces, which is very great, half of new faces, which is even better. So let's put some whiskey in our glasses and start fun part.
Let's. Sounds great. I just put the or actually I didn't hit enter. I just put the lineup in the chat how we're gonna go. We're gonna do Maclean's nose first. And then we can, so go ahead, pour that. Carl, do you want to speak on this one or?
Yeah, gladly. I'm happy to defer whenever Sam wants to jump in, or if I miss something, by all means. But yeah, Maclean's nose, we're really excited about this. So we launched this just under a year ago, June of 2023. In the UK, and then subsequently, I think it first landed with Sam and in the US. Yeah, we've both got bottles here. I'll explain the label. I'll touch on it at least. basically, fundamentally, the team at Ardnamurchan, we tossed around the idea of a blended malt. We sort of decided that, if I'm honest, there was a bit of not saturation, but there's quite a few quite tasty blended malts on the market. It's a less heralded subcategory, which is kind of how it got the idea initially. But we were like, what if we actually made like a good blended Scotch that actually had grain whiskey in there as opposed to just malted barley? So that's what we did. So we modeled it after, Maclean Nose is effectively modeled after an old school Western Highland blend. So, 60s, 70s. I think the important bits are it's fundamentally a high malt content blend. So we're making this qualitatively the same way we make all of our Ardnamurchan single malts, and more or less the same way that we bottle our Adelphis, right? So it's all quality driven. So this is 70% malt, 30% grain. Most of your commercial blends are going to be more like 20% malt and then filled with grain, which is, for those that don't know, much cheaper to produce and much easier to produce. You can produce it on a continuous still, right, as opposed to a batch still. We also bottle at 46%. There is peated whiskey in there. It's a very simple composition. So basically, there's Western Highland malt, there's Campbelltown malt, which for those of you Scotch fans, you might be able to deduce which one it is based on availability. I'll leave that open and see if anyone knows what I'm getting at there. And then there's a really high quality grain whiskey, which is actually all in sherry casks, which is kind of a unique feature. So there's a fair amount of sherry maturation, a little bit of peat. Fundamentally, we don't want this to be a dull floral blend, right? Not that I'm, ragging on any of the big companies that put blends out there, but this is a West Coast, we're a West Coast company through and through, whether it's Ardnamurchan or one of our other brands. So we hope it has character. We hope it has a little bit of depth, maybe a little bit of funk. We want it to be engaging as a whiskey. And then, at a price point, we're trying to get this out there at an aggressive price. So it's retailing right around 32 pounds in the UK. I think it's staying roughly under 40. I don't want to quote.
Like 38.99, yeah, is what I've seen.
Yeah. So, and I know full well how the 3 tiers work, and it can range quite widely. So don't quote me on that. But yeah, we want it out there for drinking whiskey, right? Bring it to a bonfire, bring it to a party. You're not worried about spending $120 on a bottle of single malt if that's not what you're in the mood for, right? So yeah. It's just meant to be versatile. Cocktails, whatever you want to do. What do people?
You really notice the sherry on this one for sure.
Yeah, it's got some sweetness, right? It's still, yeah, good. Yeah, and by the way, I should have prefaced right off the bat, we're, as a team at Adelphi and Ardnamurchan, we're completely open books, and I'll talk about how that comes forth in our bottlings and how we put our whiskey out. But the same is true when we're having some drams on a video call. This can be, I'd rather this be conversational, right? Ask me questions, grow me a little bit, or if you're just curious about things. And if I don't have the answer, I'm just going to tell you I don't know, and I'll get your contact information and I'll track it down and get back to you. So we're not hiding anything. So feel free to fire away.
The grain you're using, is this stock that Adelphi already had, in their warehouses, or is it something?
No, I don't believe so. I'll double check with Alex on that, but my understanding, it is predicated on a very good relationship that we have. So, I think this is something that maybe isn't readily apparent to everyone, regardless of how experienced you are in Scotch, but Scotch whiskey is still it's kind of still barter driven. It's very much that, let's go have a round of golf. What do you need? What do I need? What don't you need? What can I have? So we have good relationships with most of the big companies. It's easy. I feel like in the States, we all, especially, I worked in beer for a fair stretch. We tend to vilify the big beer companies, right? And if you get bought out, you're a sellout. But in whiskey, Diageo, Pernod, William Grant's, these are successful companies, right? That we still, especially as an independent bottler, have strong rapport with, and as such, we can source really good liquid. What they decide to do with that liquid is different from what we might decide to do with it, right? And in this instance, we put it into Maclean's Nose. So that's how I like to put it.
Got it. Fair enough. But just hopefully all Scotch distilleries are not owned by Diageo at some point.
Yes, agreed. I wish there was more of some of the glorious malts that they put into blends that was just in single malt form. I'm happy to go with you on that for sure. Yeah. So
And also, I wanted to
people
say,
like it, all right?
oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I wanted to say thank you to Sam for sending this bottle to us free of charge to everyone on this tasting. So I don't have to make the well, it's not a very expensive bottle anyways, but it's every little bit helps make these tastings a little more affordable. So
I was making sure I'm staying within the budgets.
perfect.
I think this is really good, and I thank you so much, Sam, because I have had to. I'm not consuming as much scotch as I was before because I had some surgery on Friday, but now I'm back. So this is really
Didn't
good.
take long, did
So
it?
thank you.
Well, I think the next toast should be to your speedy recovery. If everyone
It wasn't a big
is
deal.
agreeing. We'll just drink a little bit then. We won't. I want to say with Maclean's nose, it's kind of breaking the perception of what blended whiskey is in many, many minds. Like blended whiskey, we would think about something that cheaper quality, big, portion of grain versus small portion of sherry in this particular case. I didn't see, I think maybe John Glazer started this kind of transparency. And I think people at Ardnamurchan kind of taking this torch and going even further to have something that is non-chill filtered, natural color, higher proof, as Carl mentioned, good portion of sherry casks. It's just and the price. So it's all these boxes are checked for people who really enjoy the quality and looking for their budgets to spend.
Which what kind of sherry are you guys using for this one?
Bina, I would think it's Oloroso, but Carl, feel free to correct me.
Yeah, sorry about that.
But 100% Oloroso.
Sorry, I just lagged a bit.
No, just as asking. It's 100% Oloroso, no other sherry.
In Maclean's nose, there may be a touch of PX, but if so, it's going to be pretty light. It's going to be vast majority Oloroso. Yeah. Yeah.
And there's in bourbon barrel as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So in that way, it's similar to our single malt and to kind of our general cask profile. Will be, in terms of what we have in the warehouses, it's majority ex bourbon, and then a fair amount of ex sherry, and then some fun bits and bobs that are kicking around. Other spirits, Sauterne, champagne, lots of fun goodies. But yeah, maturation profile is pretty traditional in that regard. Bourbon, sherry predominantly. Yeah.
Are you doing anything different with the yeast or fermentation for this one?
No, not on this. No, and that's a great point, and something that we're looking at more and more. It's an underappreciated variance in Scotch. I think most newer distilleries, or most distilleries in general, would acknowledge that. But we toy with it a little bit. We use one yeast on our peated spirit in terms of malt spirit production. But we do use two yeasts for unpeated to get a little bit more ester character, fruit on the nose in particular. So that's more of an ale yeast, beer driven yeast. With the peated spirit, when we're distilling that, we just use the one distiller's yeast, just because we're really looking for malt character in that instance. However, I mean, most of us have said to production that we'd like to toy around with it and at least know what we're missing out on. You always have to play the game of, if I'm honest, distiller's yeast is what gets you the yield. It's what gets small distillery the ability to send at least passable volume to big markets like Germany and the US. So we're always looking at quality. We're always looking at, we just did a Golden Promise malt run. So those variances in quality and flavor are huge, and we love doing them, and we try to incorporate them. You also have to be smart about, how much does your yield take a hit, right? It's Golden Promise is an absolute amazing product, but
Low yields.
yeah, yields drop off really quickly.
I actually didn't know that, so that's great information. I mean, I know like Westland uses a lot of Golden Promise, so I know that. But okay, cool.
Yeah, and it's if I'm honest, like we try to keep our pricing as fair as possible, and that's big for us. We want single malt to be, at least most of the time. Obviously, there's a gamut to be run there, right? But we want it to be affordable. Westland, I love Westland. I mean, I absolutely adore a lot of their products, right? But when you start doing all that niche stuff, you do end up going up the ladder a little bit in price, and that's the nature of it, and that's okay. We have some
have too much
whiskeys too.
$38.99 bottles. Unless they're on cleared somewhere. So
yeah, you said it, not me, but yeah, their whiskey's amazing, right? It's really, really good, and we have some expensive whiskey too. I'm not avoiding that topic, that's for sure.
We're getting to those, don't worry.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to touch on anything with Maclean's nose before we start diving into the, I guess, purely Ardnamurchan Spirit?
I guess what would you say is the distinguishing characteristic, if someone was to ask you, of this blend, like you were saying, versus other blended whiskeys that people would have had out there that they think are, lesser quality because it's blended? Like, why is this better or different?
Oh, that's a great question. I think if I'm perfectly honest, I mean, and feel free to correct me here because I'm going off the top of my head. If you remove Compass Box as blended Scotch, and we're not talking blended malt, there's a lot of outrageously good blended malt, right? I think that's actually underappreciated. But if we're talking about the commercial blends, look, I like Black Label for the money. There's some really good blends out there, but I think the short answer to what you're saying is texture. I think it's pretty rare that you're going to get a blend with grain whiskey in it at under $40 that has length on the palate, which I feel that Maclean's nose has. I mean, I'm a bit biased. Length and character. And a little bit of smoke. So it's about, for me, the biggest distinguishing thing is potentially mouthfeel, if I'm honest. I think there are probably other answers there, but that'd be my quick answer. Feel free to disagree.
What is it you would put that down to? Are you just using a different grain, or is it the, yeast?
Well, it's so for one, it's that higher proportion of malt. I mean, I think malt is going to lend more richness on the whole. Generalizing here, there's some amazing. I mean, Loch Lomond single grains have some insane texture. I'm not gonna spit on grain whiskey at all, but I think malt typically will have richer mouthfeel, and then fundamentally just 46%. I mean, it's less water. Let's be real. Like that's how that happens, right? It's coming off the still at, it's going into cask. Industry standard in Scotland is 63.5%. And then from there, you're bottling to a brand and to an idea.
And now it's tasty.
So good. I'm glad you like it. I mean, there's some cracking drams on this tasting. It might not be your favorite, but I think for where it sits, we're happy with how it's going.
I would say it has a lot of flavor for 46, which is the main difference. So yeah. Have you guys ever thought of a cask strength version of this as a special kind of like, release ever?
Love it. Yeah, we absolutely have thought of it. We haven't committed to doing it yet. It has been thrown about the table after a couple of drams. I can absolutely promise you that. But we've got.
Because I can imagine this at cask strength would be killer.
Yeah. We leave ourselves open to toying with it. so like I think I briefly mentioned, probably not quite clearly enough. There's 3 distilleries in there for now. We're not committing to it being those 3 distilleries. A year from now, 2 years from now, you know, we might tweak it based on what we have access to, how we want the profile to shift a little bit. You know, batch variation is the best part of being an independent company, right? And that's, you know, you want to have consistency, but at the same time, if you've got a different color on your palette to paint with, you know, why not try it and see what happens? So that's how we're, and I would say proof is similar, you know, to the input, you know, toying with it at 50, 58, whatever, natural cast strength, whatever it is, we're definitely open to that.
But would you keep the same thought process of keeping about 70% malt to 30% grain?
Yeah, I think we'd keep it high. I think that's, I mean, it's the highest malt content of any blend on the market.
Because I don't know that if blind, I could pick this out as a blended Scotch out of a malt, because it's very malt forward for sure.
Yeah. You wouldn't be alone. I mean, it's done very well in some blind tastings in the UK and elsewhere, and that's the point, right? We want it to be good. It's all about good whiskey.
So, Carl, are you promoting this? I always think of a blended whiskey as cocktail stuff. Are you promoting it for cocktails, or are you promoting it as a sipping whiskey?
Yep, absolutely.
Both.
Yeah,
I think perfect. I think it's a perfect sipping whiskey. I mean, I know it's 46%, but come on now, with your first one, how do you warm up your palate? I mean, it's perfect.
Yeah. As Sam just chatted, right? I didn't need to be too cheeky. I think, yeah, Beth, I mean, thanks. That's a good question. Like, most of our team came from hospitality, right? Came from the on-premise world. So that's of real value to us, is providing bartenders with actual proper liquid to put in a good cocktail, right? And that's, again, I'm not getting after your big brands that tend to dominate that space. But if you have a bar or restaurant or hotel that's interested in a unique, independent, quality-driven blend, I think it's there. And most good bartenders will love the fact that it's 46. That most bartenders prefer to blend with higher proof spirits. And then to your point, yeah, I'm sipping it neat right now and I love it. So it's it should be both. If we can keep that, you know, if we can keep it good enough to sip neat and affordable and versatile enough to put in a cocktail, then we're doing our job.
Yeah, $35 a bottle. That's pretty good.
Yeah, and obviously a restaurant's getting a better price than that, right? So it's, yeah.
If this isn't a testament, I can say I recently did some wheeling and dealing because we have horrible sales tax here in Cook County in Illinois, and bought a bunch of bottles instead in another tax location. And when I went to return the ones I bought in the high tax spot, a major liquor retailer was excited to get my return because they said, we would love to have this in stock. We've been missing it and we want it back in stock. And so I think I don't think you can get a better testament than that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's brilliant.
Back.
That's brilliant to hear. Yeah.
Who's Maclean and what's special about their nose?
Oh man, I so appreciate that question.
Important questions here.
Completely dropped the ball there. So good show. I appreciate you. So yeah, it's a double entendre. It's a bit of an homage to 2 things. So first and foremost would be Charlie Maclean. Potentially a bit less known in the States, but certainly in the UK, probably around Europe, I would say, a bit of a whiskey legend. So he's written about 12 books on whiskey. He's been advising Adelphi and Ardnamurchan more or less since day one. He was actually a director of Adelphi, of our independent bottler, back in the 90s for a few years. He's one of those guys. So he's been, we like to say, and I think it says on the bottle, he's been sort of our chief nose. He's the guy that our team and Alex, you know, if they're ever like, is this going to fly? You know, does this work? We take it to Charlie. He's just a really respected individual in the industry. So, and he's also very well known for loving a blend, despite having probably some of the most insane selection of single malt you could possibly imagine. typically he's rolling with a blend on the rocks. So it's a bit of an homage to him for sure. And then the other bit would be Maclean's nose is actually, as luck would have it, sort of a rocky promontory on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula. It's about a 7-8 minute drive from the distillery. And it just happens to be called Maclean's Nose. It was a navigational landmark for sailors for decades and decades, coming in from the Atlantic into the sea lock where the distillery is kind of overlooking. And so when Alex found out that there was a landmark on the peninsula where our distillery sits that also had the same name as Charlie Maclean, who uses his nose to help us, that was a bit of a no-brainer for him. So trademarked, and this is the result.
Is that what's on the front picture?
Yeah. So that's a local artist, who drew the sort of, there's this beautiful viewpoint. You should all come, by the way. It's Sam's been, thanks Sam, appreciate that. He's holding it up, but it's a little tricky to see, but you can see kind of it juts down into the water. And that was the point that the sailors used to determine whether they should sail right of another peninsula that would take them into the port of Oban. But if you were to stay left, if you stayed too close to Maclean's Nose, you end up in a dead end, which is the sea lock that our distillery is on. So that's the story of that.
Got it. If we have any more questions about Maclean's Nose, throw it in the chat and we'll get them answered later. Let's move on to number 2.
Yeah, there's half an hour on the first whiskey. That's my bad.
And this one, I do want to say a big thank you to Brian Vital, who's on the tasting, who he let me sit this off with him. And so I thought this was actually a really late add to this tasting after I'd already emailed Sam and told him what the lineup was going to be, but add this, I'm excited about trying this.
You did water already.
Yeah, so this is a pretty cool thing, if I'm honest.
This is not whiskey because it's not 3 years, correct?
Hence the spirit title.
Exactly.
Nando, I got it at auction, and I was just, it was getting an Ardnamurchan. I didn't know much about it, and I was just trying to gather what I can gather at auction, and I saw this, and so I grabbed it.
Well, thank you.
Nice job, Brian.
Glad we're all drinking it.
Sorry if I butted in there, guys.
So why would you release the spirit, right? That's the question we're gonna have.
Sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, just why'd you decide to release something as a spirit and not, wait, was it ready?
Yeah, it was ready. It was a tease, right? It was pretty darn good liquid that incorporated things that we weren't ready to put under the Ardnamurchan Scotch label. So we waited. We first distilled at Ardnamurchan. Now we're talking about our single malt, right? Sherry prominent. Yeah, absolutely fair. And I'll touch on that and probably maybe potentially why that would be. So we first distilled July of 2014. So we will be 10 years old in July of this year, which is obviously exciting for us. We didn't launch our whiskey in the domestic market in the UK until 2020. So we were basically a full 6 or so. A fair amount of the whiskey was 5 at that point, but we were basically a full 6 before we put whiskey on the market. So this, the AD Spirit releases were to give people a little bit of a sense, of where our product was going. The cool thing about this is Alex is pretty, he's quite good at running a distillery, but he's also just sort of prescient in understanding how things go. So he invested reasonably well on octaves, on 55-liter smaller casks. So this has a fair whack of octave matured Ardnamurchan malt whiskey, or in some cases not yet whiskey. But it's a precursor to it's. And as Nando rightly says, I'd say it's a sherry heavy, precursor to what became our core AD single malt. So a mixture of unpeated and peated spirit, and then a mixture of both cask size and sherry type. So Oloroso and PX. and then also octaves, hogsheads, and butts in this particular bottling, and then bottled at 55.3. There is also bourbon matured whiskey in this. Yeah, I think I'd have to double check the numbers and do the math, but our core single malt is 2/3 to 1/3 bourbon to sherry. So we lean bourbon. We want the distillate to shine. It's fifth. So sorry, quickly to touch on the core, because it's kind of an important context point here. It's the thing that we hope to always have in market, any of our markets. So it's half peated, half unpeated, 2/3 bourbon, 1/3 sherry, and that's always bottled at 46.8%, non-chill filter, natural color, all that, right? So this is kind of a fun, exclusive cask strength version of the build up to that, and again with more sherry character, I would say, than our core single malt. Certainly true.
Still Oloroso or other sherry?
There's PX in this
Both
as well.
Oloroso and PX, yeah.
And it also says
Yeah.
long
So we work with
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Carl.
long fermentation.
Yeah, well, it says that
what
on
it
the
says?
bottle. What is your fermentation period? Like around 70 to 80 hours?
So we go from 68 to 115 to 120.
Oh, it's still
So and that basically comes down to the weekend. So our guys at the distillery, we work 2 shifts. We work 6 to 2, 2 to 10, Monday through Friday, unless we need some sort of catch up, which we do right now, and I can touch on that. So basically what I'm getting at is, depending on when you go into washback and start fermenting, you might hit that 68, 72 hour right as Friday draws to a close, right? And they're not distilling that yet. So it's going to sit in washback for another 2 days until Monday. And so that's how we get over 100. And we're starting to track that a little bit more carefully, but we're actually quite happy with how those different fermentation times have given us variation to put into our whiskeys. Because as you can imagine, or as you know, we're nosing various casks to go into every bottling that we put out. So a 68-hour ferment might provide a different backbone to a blend, to a bottling, than a 112-hour ferment, right? They can both be great. They might just have different traits.
This spirit is awesome. I'm actually really enjoying this. I'm glad we got this.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool treat. Was it Brian who got that? That's
yeah, Brian Vitale.
I'm like moderately envious, if I'm honest. That's cool. I've had it a few times.
Thank you, Brian. This is really good. I mean, really, really good.
No problem. It was not going to get open because I had so much sitting on my shelf. I'm like, I need to let other people try it.
A good friend right there.
Can you talk about the peat you guys use, Carl? Where it's from?
Absolutely.
Why you pick that one versus others?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks. Another great question. So we use Highland peat. That's one of the few. Well, I don't want to put it that way. It's a part of our production that we don't have as much control over as we would like to. So we are working on floor malting. We do have a floor. We have a kiln. We just need to commission it such that it's actually functional. Now, I say that with the caveat that we're not going to be able to pull off what Springbank pulls off, where we can't floor malt. We do 400,000 liters per annum. The fact that Springbank does 100% floor malting on over 200,000 liters blows my mind. I don't know how they sort that out. I mean, I know they have 2 levels, but that's crazy to me. So
Isn't it just
when
a
we
lot
do
of
get that going,
isn't it just a lot of
Yeah.
child labor in Scotland?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yeah, that's exactly right. But yeah, we'll get to probably 10% of our annual production. So it'll be a fun special release, right? It'll be it won't be, all of our malt. But yeah, so we use Highland peat. I believe it is Aberdeenshire. I'm happy to double check on that, but I think fundamentally the important bit for our character is, we're not trying to be Isla. We don't need to try to be Ardbeg or Lefroy or Kilhoman. They are amazing at what they do, right? And fundamentally too, we need people to know that Ardnamurchan is a place. It's a peninsula, just like Isla is an island. You know, we want to create kind of our own DNA. And that's in the Western Highlands, and Highland peat, I think, is the more intuitive alignment there, right? Than that super iodine crazy Isla peat that just wouldn't quite be right, in my opinion. Now,
well, plus Port Ellen Maltings is going to stop distributing outside of their distilleries, right?
Yeah, that's correct. At least that's the word on the street. Fortunately, that doesn't impact us a whole lot, unless everyone who had Port Ellen starts going to Highland or something. But we'll see what the trickle down is there. Yeah.
Carl, you brought up the core release, which we don't have in this tasting.
Sure.
And I probably should have found a way to get that in, but
that's fine.
There you go. I am going to tell a quick little story right here before we move to number 3, and then if anyone wants to jump in on the Spirit real quick before we move on, we can too. But the kind of core of why we are doing this tasting. So I had 2 bottles of the Ardnamurchan Core Spirit. One was a gift. Someone gave me a bottle, and then I had bought a bottle when Ardnamurchan kind of hit the shelves. We had a bottle kill event at my house, and the Ardnamurchan Core bottling was 3/4 full, and we absolutely ran through it. Everyone that night was like, "Oh, it's really good. I really like this." I think it's also bottled at 46%, right? It's not. I know it's not 40.
46.8. Yeah.
46.8. Okay.
Yeah.
And so everyone liked that, which is somewhat normal, I guess, being with all whiskey drinkers, they would like that. So I was like, okay, cool. And then last year I took the other bottle I had to a guys fishing trip. Every year we do a guys fishing trip to Mammoth. And so on that tasting, brought the bottle. And all these guys are not really whiskey drinkers. They'll have a drink here and there, but they're not really people who go seek out whiskey like I do, or like we do. I go to bed pretty early the first night. I wake up in the morning, start making breakfast. I'm up at like 5. It's a fishing trip. We're up early. And I'm looking at all the bottles I brought, and I noticed the Ardnamurchan was gone, completely gone. So I'm like just asking all the guys on the trip, like once we get in the boat, I'm like, hey, what the hell happened last night? You guys drank all that whiskey? And like, oh man, that was so good. Really like that. Where do I find that? I want to get some. Like are all whiskeys like that? I'm like, no, not all whiskeys are like that necessarily. They're all different, right? But to have a group of individuals that don't really drink whiskey, but went straight to that and killed that whole bottle in a single night, I just think speaks to what Ardnamurchan is and what that people really enjoy it. It's one thing when, enthusiasts like us really enjoy something, and that's kind of normal for us. We'll find things, and even things that won't appeal to the masses necessarily that we'll like, especially with the cask strength stuff. But for, I think, normal people or normal people that aren't in like we are, to really enjoy that and go seek out that bottle and go back to it multiple times, I really think speaks to what Ardnamurchan is doing and continues to do. And I know, and talking about Ardnamurchan with other people in the industry, I know there's a lot of people who are really excited about what they're doing. Chris Riesbeck, I just had a long talk with him. He's now with Found North, but just had a long talk with him about what you guys are doing, and we agree. Like, we really enjoy what's going on. And I think when I released this tasting, I had said, I think in 10 to 15 years, you're going to look back and say Ardnamurchan's one of the better, if not one of the best distilleries in Scotland. I just think what you guys are doing is awesome. So,
wow,
that's why we're doing this tasting.
I mean, that's a lot of amazing stuff to hear, if I'm honest.
Was that a $20 testimonial or 100?
I don't even get paid, so
yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I think that you just hit both of the most important things of like people who are in the industry and respect how we're making whiskey at the end. That's really cool to hear. But I think most importantly is that first bit where, we cater to people that love whiskey. That's what the whiskey is made for. That's how we're all whiskey geeks, right? That's our whole team is. But it's also crafted so that people who are newer to whiskey or, earlier on their journey, or however you want to put it, whatever phrasing you want to use. Like, we don't want it to be too peaty. We don't want it to be too unusual. We want it to be both interesting for people that drink a lot of whiskey and approachable for people that don't drink much whiskey at all. And if we can, that's I think a fairly tall task. So when we hear those sorts of stories of people on a fishing trip, 10 in a bottle, that's pretty cool, man. I love to hear that.
That was the core.
I wasn't so
core
pumped
bottle?
when I woke up the next morning, think I was gonna be able to get some more of that, but yeah, I think it was awesome to back to it and drink it. So
Was that the core bottle, Nando?
that was, yeah.
And that was at 46.8?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Nice.
But if anyone has any questions, I guess, about the Ardnamurchan Spirit, go ahead, throw them in the chat or ask right now. Otherwise, let's move on to number 3, which is the cask strength expression that we have.
Yeah. Are we on?
Maybe you could tell us a little bit about this AD designation, because I've seen it on a couple and I don't quite understand what you're doing. So maybe you could help me understand the bottling and the labeling, what you're doing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely fair. And you're not the first to say that. We've tried to take that on board. So we're trying to clean it up a little bit. We all kind of, it was a bit muddled, I'll be honest. With the bottles that you've seen, if you've seen the ones with the numbers after the AD, 05, 15 or whatever it is. Yeah, like the single cask that you're having later. That was merely meant to be transparent. So that was just bottling date effectively, and cask number. And we did the same for the core and for the cask strength for a while. You'll see I have a cask strength here. Right?
Real
So
quick, sorry to interrupt, Chris. Which one are we doing? Because I just noticed Sam and Nando both put a different order up top. Apologies.
I apologize for the confusion. Let's go by Nando's order.
Okay, so it's the tour bottle is the next one.
are we on 187 or are we on ArdnAmerica?
That's correct. Nando would be
I
single
thought it
cask
was the
187.
AD. Well, this is why I asked. And Nando decided to step away. Andy, go smack him. Tell him to come back.
AD.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I might have switched that. What do you have number 3 on your bottle? Is it a CK?
Because that can
That should be the
determine,
80 CK. I might have switched the lineup from Carl what we had kind of talked about initially, because the last 3 are all sherried. So I just kind of thought that made more sense. But if we want to do 4, that's fine. So
we're on
what are you doing?
the CK 187, Cask 187.
187. All right, cool. Thank you.
Sweet.
Continue.
Perfect. So CK 187, I don't have a ton of familiarity with, but I did obviously look it up, and I have a familiarity with kind of what we're doing. So this is a single cask. So cask 187. One cool thing about this is an unpeated Ardnamurchan, which actually we have not bottled a huge amount of at all, regardless of whether it's a full-on distillery expression or a single cask. Typically single cask buyers end up looking for, oh man, I love you guys just cling to your glasses, and it drew me to you because of the video to audio thing, and that's amazing. So unpeated and an American oak barrel, so not even ex-bourbon, which is very unusual for us. One of the cool
sorry,
things,
clarify that when you say American oak, not bourbon, are you saying virgin American oak?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm going to defer to Sam here because this is from before my time. My understanding is this is not ex-bourbon. Sam, does that sound right to you?
So since that was the first single cask that we brought in, I need to look up, not to confuse you. So give me a couple of seconds, continue, and I'll put that on chat.
Yeah. So this is 2015 distillate, unpeated distillate. And I believe based on the way that it's described, it is not a bourbon barrel, or if it is bourbon, it's not first fill, but that would be surprising. So it makes me think that it's virgin oak. What I can tell you is single cask, right? So this is a program that is near and dear to our hearts, and we really try to keep them going as much as possible. So we love working with good partners, and we love doing our best to reward those partners with fun things, right? So obviously it's important to push our core products, the single malt, the cask strength, Maclean's nose. Those are probably our three cores. We do limited releases that will see a fair amount of distribution worldwide. We also have, in the last year and a half or so, we released, so the two probably best known unpeated expressions of Ardnamurchan worldwide. One would be Paul and Noir, which is a champagne barrique finished cask strength unpeated Ardnamurchan. And then we also did a reasonably sized Madeira cask release that was fully unpeated spirit as well. Apart from those, almost all the single casks that are out there, except for quite recently, are peated. Part of that is simply because peated whiskey is a little bit better, typically young, right? We're under 10 as a distillery, so we're now getting to a point. I mean, we actually just did a blend last week. Actually, I'll just tell you, we blended a new batch of Maclean's nose, and we were tasting some unpeated bourbon barrels that we're putting into Maclean's nose, and we were kind of like, why are we putting these into the blend? So we're really happy with where those are going. But yeah, it's actually a relatively unusual thing to have a cool cask strength single cask of unpeated. So this should be right around 6 years. I think this was bottled in 2021. So pretty special unpeated Ardnamurchan distillate single cask. Another pretty cool thing to have on a tasting, in my opinion. Sam, were you able to find anything further from your end?
Yes, I was, and I can't blame you because you were at that time working for SDI.
Indeed.
Strategy Development International. So you're still alive. We're not going to kill you. But it was a bourbon cask. To answer your question, was a bourbon barrel.
It was bourbon.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was gonna say, if it was virgin, the color would be a lot deeper, right? Because this is so light. So I kind of figured it probably had to be bourbon.
I'm quite surprised that it was designated as American oak and not as bourbon.
Yeah, that's
I'm not sure
interesting.
how that came
But
to
there's
pass,
no reason
but,
you can't say American oak for bourbon, right?
Yeah, we certainly, to my knowledge, since I joined the company, we wouldn't do that way. But that's fine.
What is it, honey?
So be it.
I know, honey, but Papa's almost done with it.
And I put the link if any one of you want to see more detail on this cask, it's in a link that I just put in chat.
Yep, that's pretty cool on the Google Drive.
Yeah, that honey caramel is very prominent on this one, and that finish to me is like sweet stone fruits, like a really sweet pear or something like that. I don't on the back. I just noticed on the back that you guys have tasting notes. I don't get the mint chocolate necessarily, but I probably just have to sit with this a little while. But I think this is awesome. This is really
cool.
Good.
I think I get what they mean by the mint, because there's a bit of like pop
burst at the end. Yeah,
that pop, which is what probably someone might be like, oh, that's minty. I don't know if I would call it minty, but I see what they may be trying for.
Yeah, sometimes, in fairness, if you've ever seen Adelphi tasting notes, which is the same team as Ardnamurchan, they tend to be relatively absurd. So feel free to just disregard any tasting note that you do not agree with. But I will say, we like to use a descriptor. You can have whiskeys that are mentholic, right? They have that sort of minty bite thing. And then I think mint chocolate, if I'm just deducing here, because I didn't do notes on this, would be like if it was soft, or muted by kind of a rounder sweetness, but a little bit of that mentholic thing from the heat, especially 59.4, I think this bottling was. So that might be something that they were getting at when they looked at it. A quick thing, and I know I talk a lot, so Nando, just tell me to stop. But the cool thing about the single cask, it gives you a cool evolution from the AD Spirit that you guys have. If you look at the bottle, the opaque bottles nowadays, now that we're only making obviously whiskey, any opaque sort of blue-gray bottle like that is a single cask. And that's a nod to the rock on the peninsula, on the Ardnamurchan Peninsula, which is the whole peninsula is volcanic. So the rock has a little bit of this bluish tinge. So we give it, that's sort of our single cask designation. And then if you see the hydrometer, so that's used in distilling for measuring density and looking at your kind of overall alcohol eventually. That clear hydrometer is another nod. We were talking about hospitality and something like Maclean's nose going into bars and restaurants. That is for bartenders out there who have had to do inventory at 3 a.m. at the end of a long Saturday. Opaque bottles are the worst for doing
100%.
Yeah. So I've been there. My boss has been there. So it's a little bit of an homage to hospitality, so that you can actually know how much whiskey's in there.
I love that because well, you can just look behind me and you probably know there's a certain distillery that I care about. Fucking absolutely hate their Octomore bottlings that are opaque, that you just can't see through and you have no idea how much spirit you have left. So I love that you guys have that on there, quite honestly.
Yeah, I'm a fan as well.
Oh wait, did you guys have a little clear line on the side so you can see?
Oh yeah, sorry. So
Right
like
here.
if you look at,
Oh, nice. Yep. Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's just a nod to the industry. Shows you know what you're doing.
Wow, I wouldn't go that far.
You haven't screwed it up yet, Carl. All right, let's move to number 4, and then I'll cut the recording a little short, but at least we get all the Ardnamurchan OB bottlings in there. So
Cool. It's this Ardnamerica then.
this is the ArdnAmerica Tour bottling, which, unbeknownst to me, is only an East Coast bottling apparently. So a huge thank you to Beth, who actually donated this to our tasting. So Beth, appreciate it.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you.
Very kind. So I cracked my bottle because, in fairness, we sent all but 2 bottles. So this was what I should say. I'll start with this. It's we work with Sam and Chris and the Impex team across the U.S. And they're amazing partners. Incredible team. Sam and Chris are tremendous people and great advocates for our brand and for all the brands in their portfolio, but also their whole team is insanely talented, passionate, and they really care about whiskey. And it's pretty rare, if I'm honest, to get that in the supply chain. So it's a real pleasure to work with them, and they are cool enough to deal with us liking to do fun, silly things with terrible puns. And that's basically what this was. So my boss, Connell, our sales director, he likes a bad pun maybe even more than I do, which is saying something. And yeah, so we did a one of our market visits last year along the Eastern Seaboard, and we decided to just do an Ardnamurchan 900 bottle bottling. Yeah, it opened up a little bit. The idea was just to have something cool for those accounts that we visited and were supporting during the trip. And then, yeah, obviously Impex was able to sell to a few other places. But yeah, this is basically a big old sherry Ardnamurchan. It's a meaty sherry bomb. So this is 57.8%. It is actually partially peated, so it's not all that dissimilar to the peat proportions on our core, which a lot of people, if you've had our core at least a decent bit, you might be surprised. I think it comes off as more peaty. Not going to tell you what to taste though. And then it has all that classic big sherry, like graphite, dark cherry. I mean, it's just a big peat, semi-peated sherry monster.
Lots of sherry. I really only get the peat on the finish when the sherry starts to break up a little bit.
Yep. I got the same, Nando. Lovely though. Another lovely, but you know, the sherry on here is just beautiful. But I love anything sherried, so
Yeah.
Yeah,
We're-
Andy, I think you and I have the same nose or palate, because I was going to say I get that barbecue, Lay's like barbecue note on it.
It's definitely got the barbecue thing, like
Mhm.
that savory campfire action.
Actually, a little less sweet on the palate though than expected.
I think the peat dries it out. And our whiskey, I would say, tends to be pretty dry, pretty saline. One of the things that what's that? Sorry.
Oh, I'm laughing because I was just about to ask, like, you have a pretty consistent like salinity on all of these expressions, and it's really not, it like works really well with both the sherry and the bourbon barrels. So
yeah, the thing that when Connell and I tasted this for the first time before the trip, like the salinity, that little bit of funk, that Ardnamurchan character that we hope really continues to be a thread. If you can taste it on a relatively young sherry bomb cask strength, that is huge for us, right? If you think about like us trying to put Ardnamurchan as a brand out there for you all, we want you to be able to, if you like Ardnamurchan, we want it to always be recognizably Ardnamurchan in some way, shape, or form. And we're not always going to pull that off. Like, I'm only reasonably decent at my job, right? So and Connell's probably about the same. He's probably a little bit better. But we're always so excited when we have a big meaty whiskey that still tastes like Ardnamurchan, and I think this is one of those. And I think that salinity, as you said, Nando, it is what we want as one of the defining threads.
So I was going to ask, given your location on that, western coast, slightly more north than island, everything, so you do feel like that physical location, you do, even though it seems you're more inland, you're still getting kind of that salinity, sea air effect in what's happening with the whiskey and the malt and stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to be careful with that because I'm not a marketeer, and I'm not going to tell you that the waves are crashing on our warehouses and then.
Fair enough.
Probably get some of them.
Big Carl,
oh, there you go. Just for a second, let's slow down. Am I back?
You're back. Yeah. You're back.
I'm back. Cool. So yeah, to be brief, what I will say, right, is we are actually right on the water, and the whole peninsula is coastal, right? There's not a ton of distance from the south shore on Loch Sooner, which is saltwater, and the north shore, which looks out to the small isles and then out to Skye, Lewis, and Harris. If you
you are pretty much near the water.
Yeah. We walk 5 minutes and we're going for a swim in salt water. But it's not, again, it's not a big crashing waves or anything like that, but it is right there. But the thing I think is important is maybe if you have a glass of tap water at Ardnamurchan, it's like borderline beige because it's running through peat off the hill behind the distillery. And other than a UV filter, other than what's required for regulations, we're not doing anything to that water. And the thing that I think is the most plausible way of explaining maybe how location influences whiskey, and maybe there is something about the air around the cask. So I'm not going to say that's not a thing, right? It's maturing in a place with a different environment than Speyside. But I will also add that our whiskey, or our new make, comes off the still, 70, 71, 72% alcohol, goes into the cask at 63.5. Everything that isn't from 72 to 63.5 is Ardnamurchan water, right? So you're looking at a pretty fair percentage of what goes into the barrel is water that's very different from what Maclean or Glenfiddich is filling into the barrel, right? So how much stock you want to put in that is up to you, and whether that influences salinity or anything, I'm not asserting yay or nay. But I think that's part of the fun magic of whiskey, right?
Cool.
Did I even answer the question, or did I just go off on a tangent there?
No, I think that works.
Cool.
Before we all start yelling at each other about whiskey terroir and whether it exists or not, I think most of this probably
Whiskey terroir, there it is.
But I want to say one thing about this. This expression is beautiful. It's really good. You can give this to me any day of the week. If there was a critique, I would say that what I've really loved about Ardnamurchan is that you can really you feel the spirit in what you guys bottle, and especially with those barley notes, and like get a little bit of the hay, and it keeps a little bit some of those cereal notes that you sometimes don't find that are hidden on a lot of different malts. Like I really love what you guys do there. It's a little bit hidden on this because the sherry is so influenced in this one. Not, again, I would drink this any day of the week, but that would be my only critique on this one.
Nope, I agree. Yeah, it's not my daily drinker for Ardnamurchan. I think it's good whiskey. Like I'm happy with the whiskey, as you said. But yeah, no, we would very, very much trend towards something with more distillate character, with more barley character. I mean, that is what we want. That's why our core is 2/3 bourbon, right?
But that's why you have the core. This is for the other stuff to see what else you can, freaking do, have something a little different, and it's freaking delicious. So no criticism here, Nando. No,
I am not. It was not a criticism. It was a critique. That's it. I said I still really enjoyed it.
I have a peaceful solution here. So before we see Bino and Nando going to the fist fight, ArdnAmerica tour, or Ardnamurchan, we call it AddAmerica, is coming to the West Coast this year.
Really?
So
same bottling or different bottling?
We're different bottling.
Okay.
Not the same. So we have a chance to recover or to ignore your critiques with this one. I don't know if I can tell more about it right now, but we're very, very excited. Super excited. It's going to be Pacific Northwest, Washington, Oregon, Northern California, but I'm pretty sure we're going to allocate some for you guys in the South.
You better get Southern California, Sam, or I'm going to come after you.
Bino, anytime. I know you've been to Northern California pretty often recently, trying to hide from me, but that's okay. That's fine.
Yeah, we're quite excited on our end as well. It's the whiskey's ready. Sam and the Impex team and myself and the Ardnamurchan team now unfortunately just have to deal with logistics, which is the bane of our collective existence.
Yeah.
But we're gonna work on it.
Okay. You're complaining. Take a look how much of a gray hair I have. So don't complain. Be happy.
Hey, at least you still have hair, Sam. All right, so you're good to go there.
I'll take it.
No, I'm going to end the recording, but we'll continue through the